Hi, Kristin. Welcome back. So, to start off this session, I would like to check in with you on how you were feeling last week when you were completing the GAD7. I noticed at times you seemed stuck on some of the questions and your body language changed throughout the process, including bouncing your leg and foot during some of the prompts or the measures. Let's talk more about these moments from last week for a few minutes just to start off the session. And as we discuss the results from the assessment, please stop me at any moment for any comments, questions, or concerns that you have. It's very important that we discuss your interpretation of the results. So let's start off by reviewing the assessment tool that we used in the last session. We'll be discussing the results of the GAD7, which we use to determine levels of worry and anxiety and how these different aspects of worry and anxiety affected your life within the last 2 weeks. This was the tool that we used last week, and you can see that your answers are scored here. So, I want to get into the scoring of your assessment now. We can review each of the measures and the score that you identified. So for the first measure here, I'm going to place it in front of you just so that you can read along with me. For the first measure, which is feeling nervous, anxious, or on edge, you circled a 3. So that means that in the last 2 weeks, you've been feeling anxious, nervous, or on edge nearly every day. And for the second measure, not being able to stop or control worrying, you also circled a 3. This means that nearly every day over the last 2 weeks, you have felt as if you could not stop or control your worrying. For the third measure, worrying too much about different things, you circled a 3. This means that nearly every day for the last 2 weeks, you feel that you've been worrying too much about different things. Okay, moving on to the fourth measure, trouble relaxing, you circled a 2. This finding suggests that more than half of the days in the last 2 weeks you've had trouble relaxing. This also shows that there have been days in the last 2 weeks that you were able to relax. For the fifth measure, being so restless that it is hard to sit still, you circled a 1. This means that several days over the last 2 weeks you have felt so restless that it's hard to sit still. This also means that there have been a significant number of days in the last 2 weeks that you have been able to sit still and did not feel restless. For the sixth measure, becoming easily annoyed or irritable, you circled 1. This means that for several days in the last 2 weeks, you have felt yourself being easily annoyed or irritable. This also shows that you have had quite a few days in the last 2 weeks that you were not easily annoyed or irritable. For the seventh measure, feeling afraid as if something awful might happen, you circled 3. This tells me that nearly every day for the last 2 weeks, you have felt as if something awful might happen. So down at the bottom here, when we add up your scores throughout the 7 measures, we have a total score of 16. And a score of 16 means the possibility of some severe anxiety going, which lines up with the concerns that you discussed. I would like for us to continue this discussion on the findings so we can begin to make a plan moving forward. Let me know what thoughts you have on these findings and if they seem to be correct. I know you've had some good questions already as we discuss the scores on the assessment. High scores on this assessment does not mean that there's anything wrong with you. It's just giving us an idea of where and what we should be tailoring the plan to. Being honest on this assessment is vital, and thank you for doing so. I know you had some worries about this score being shared with loved ones, the school, or your work, and I'd like to remind you that everything in this session is confidential except for the limitations we already discussed. This information is between you and I, and we're going to work together through this, and I will be here with you every step of the way. Let's talk about the findings of the assessment and how these correlate with your concerns you brought in a couple weeks ago. So when we look at the findings of this assessment and your scoring on each measure, I can see how these line up with the concerns you brought to me in our first session. You discussed your worries for your son and how they fill your mind, and you just cannot seem to get these thoughts out of your head once they start. You're having recurring thoughts of your son being hurt and being afraid that something bad is going to happen to him. These thoughts that ruminate in your head cause you to feel nervous, anxious, or on edge nearly every day. These worries are also hard to control, and you feel as if you cannot stop worrying, and this affects you nearly every day. You identified being afraid that something bad might happen to your son, and these thoughts happen nearly every day as well. You did not specifically discuss how it's too difficult to relax day to day, being restless, or being easily annoyed or irritable. I can see how these constant worries and intrusive thoughts of your son being hurt can affect your ability to relax, sit still, and become easily irritable. Although it's not a frequent everyday thing, you did identify that this does happen. And according to the assessment, these feelings may make it hard to relax more than half of the days over the last 2 weeks. And also, several days you were feeling restless and easily annoyed. So, let's talk about the future. Our next step will be taking these findings and making a plan moving forward. I would like for us to create this plan together. What are some specific goals you would like to accomplish? I'm interested in your take on these findings, what they mean to you, and how these findings affect your goals for therapy. We have 20 minutes left in this session today, so let's take time to explore these questions.